To expand on this further, let's go with Marcos Molitzis, the founder, publisher of Daily Kos, author, of course, of Taking on the System. Marcos, thanks for your time tonight.
Pleasure, anytime. As
I suggested to Lawrence O'Donnell, it's one thing if he or I were to say this. It's one thing if your readers or diarists were to say this. What does it mean that it's President Carter saying this?
Well, it does carry a certain level of authority, not just intellectual, moral authority. This guy is a guy who grew up in the South, knows the South better than probably most people, was a governor of Georgia. So he knows what he's talking about. This isn't some, random partisan shot against Joe Wilson. I mean, I think he really feels this deeply, that this is something that troubles him, and it's a problem that America needs to deal with.
I think also, to be clear here, he did not specifically invoke what Congressman Wilson said or did or him in any of this. His comments to Brian were broadly about as he said, the overwhelming portion of the intensely demonstrated animosity towards President Obama is based on the fact that he is a black man. What happens next politically? Where does this go in the next 48 hours, do you think?
I don't know, but ultimately, there is a kernel of truth, and I think it has to be addressed. There's a reason that these teabaggers, these conservatives, are claiming that Obama was born in Kenya and not American. He's not legitimate in their eyes. He's not a real American. And poll after poll has shown that 2/3 of Republicans, 2/3, do not believe that Barack Obama was born in the United States, or are not sure. They think it's open to debate. So clearly, this is not an issue of policy differences. They are really angry that there's a black man in charge of this country, and they're lashing out in ways such as the U-Lie incident. I mean, Joe Wilson has a history of this kind of stuff. He was one of 7 state senators in South Carolina to vote against removing the Confederate flag from the state capitol. I mean, this is a guy that has a history already of so-called defending the heritage of the South, whatever that might mean. And I think it's not hard to draw conclusions from that.
I want to take this opportunity because this has not been around that much, and it was on Brian Williams' piece on Jimmy Carter tonight on Nightly News, and we have run it here already once. I want to play the clip from President Carter once again so we know the terrain we're talking about. Then I have another question for you.
I think an overwhelming portion of the intensely demonstrated animosity toward President Barack Obama is based on the fact that he is a black man, that he's African American. I live in the South, and I've seen the South come a long way, and I've seen the rest of the country that shared this South's attitude toward minority groups at that time, particularly African Americans. That racism inclination still exists, and I think it's bubbled up to the surface because of a belief among many white people, not just in the South but around the country, that African Americans are not qualified to lead this great country. It's an abominable circumstance and grieves me and concerns me very deeply.
Marcos, big picture here. I think people foresaw the nation's past history of racism as a factor in the election last year as something to be overcome, and I think a lot of people, even those who did not vote for the president, saw and felt a sense of triumph that this had occurred. Did anybody foresee this as an issue of governance, or an issue that would actually be, even if it with 10-foot poles, exploited by the opposing party in governance?
Clearly we knew this was going to happen. Anybody who has any inkling of what the conservative movement is about and what it is capable of knew that they were going to latch on this sort of thing as a tool to try to rally their own base and try to drive Obama's favorabilities into the ground. I mean, you saw what they did to Bill Clinton, who was a white president, obviously, but accused him of murdering people, all sorts of horrible things. So this is not beyond them. So it was clear when Obama became president, and as you have the Republican Party taken over by the Rush Limbaughs and Glenn Becks and Bill O'Reillys, you knew that this was sort of what was going to happen. It was almost inevitable. And I think what is important now is to see how we as a nation react to those baseless and hideous attacks.
As if we needed an underscoring, you mentioned Bill O'Reilly's name at this hour as we speak. The segment he is doing is about Acorn, as if Barack Obama were its founder, president, and made $1 million a year or a week off of it. It underscores it perfectly. Marcos Molitzis of Daily Kos, always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks for your time tonight.